What's up, guys, and welcome back to an episode of the Last Take Sports Podcast.
And in today's episode, we will be talking about college football. We are getting into our conference predictions, and we're going to start with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. But first, let's get right into the Big Ten. And I know we already talked about Michigan State. We talked about how we think their schedule is going to play out, but there's still 13 other teams in the conference, and we're going to talk about how we think that's going to play out with them. So we're going to start at the bottom of each conference. For the Big Ten, it's split into the West and the East. So I believe we're going to start with the West, and then we're going to work from the bottom up, and then we're going to go to the East and do the same. So Henry, let's start off with the West, and I'll start with what I got, and then you can go after me. At number 7 in the West, I got Northwestern, and they're imploding from the inside and out. Their program is an absolute mess, with their head coach getting fired and the whole hazing allegations, players transferring out. I got them at 2-10. Not much going on there. Then I got Purdue right above them, 4-8. They lost a lot of their offense, and I just don't think they'll be able to have the same production as as this past year. They got Nebraska at 5-7 above them. I mean, they're nothing special per normal. And then I got, so it gets a little confusing, Henry, and correct me if I'm wrong, but should it be conference record over divisional record, right? Conference record takes place because when we did our predictions, the website we did it through kind of screwed it up a little.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at a little bit of a screwed up predictions, but I'm going to try my best to work around that. So I got Illinois at 4. I got them at 8-4 overall. They're going to be solid. I believe they were an 8-win team last year as well. Really exceeded expectations, and I expect them to keep that level. They really didn't lose too much, so I think they're going to maintain that level of play right there. And then coming in at 3, I have Wisconsin at 9-3 overall. And I think they're going to be a solid team all around. But I believe that Minnesota and Iowa, and even Minnesota and Iowa will get the better of them in that division. So between those two, Minnesota and Iowa, I have Minnesota at number 2 at 8-4 overall, and then representing the Big Ten West, I have Iowa at 10-2. Really like Iowa with the quarterback coming in. I think the defense will get them through games. They win at home. That's the big thing. They get the job done at home, and their schedule really isn't too difficult. And I think that the games that they need to win against their divisional opponents like Wisconsin, like Illinois, I believe they'll be able to get those games done. 10-2 overall. I have Iowa representing the Big Ten West. Henry, should I go through my East, or do you want to go through your West first?
No, I think let me go through my West. You'll give your
All right, yeah.
yeah. So I'm going to start again at 7 with Northwestern. Northwestern is the worst team in this conference. I mean, as you said, they're imploding. There's not a whole lot to talk about. It's going to be a disastrous few years for this team. At 6, I kind of have a shocker. I have Illinois. And Illinois is supposed to be one of the sleepers in terms of this conference. But honestly, I think outside of the top 2, which in my opinion are Wisconsin and Iowa, as I'll get into later, I think this whole bottom of this conference is a wash. I have Illinois at 3-6 in the conference and 6-6 overall, so still making a bowl game. In fact, every team I have is making a bowl game from this side of the conference outside of Northwestern. And then right above them, I have Purdue, who's 6-6 and 4-5 in the conference. Again, another team who's just average. I know they lost their head coach, lost their quarterback, lost a lot, but they're going to find a way to win games. That home field advantage is going to bring a lot, especially with this weak conference. So they'll get, I think they take care of business in terms of 2 of their bye games. They're playing Louisville. I believe they lose that game. But outside of that, I think they find a way to figure out 4 wins in the conference play. Next, at number 4, I have Nebraska. Nebraska is a team who got a new coach. Matt Rule got fired from the Carolina Panthers previously at Baylor before. I think he turns this program around, quite honestly, Andrew. I mean, Jeff Sims brought in a quarterback from Georgia Tech. I think he's a difference maker for them. I think,
I really do like Jeff Sims. I think he brings a lot to that team, especially as a dual threat guy.
mhm. Yeah, and that home field is arguably the best in the Big Ten. From what I remember, they have a good amount of night games. So playing the night games at home for them is a big thing. They get Michigan at home, that's huge for them. That could be a big turning point in this program if they find a way to win a game like that. But honestly, I think this is a building block year, but 7-5 is a good step for them. And then at 3, I have Minnesota. I think there's been some allegations about PJ Fleck's culture at Minnesota, and I think this program, like Northwestern, I mean, is on a downward spiral. I don't think it's that bad yet, but I just don't see this team being better than the top 2. And at 2, in a tier of their own, I kind of have Wisconsin and Iowa. And this game, I feel like, comes down to the game at Camp Randall in the middle of October between Wisconsin and Iowa. I have Iowa winning that game and winning the Big Ten West, but I think Wisconsin is going to be a much improved team with a completely new coaching staff, new offensive scheme, new everything. I think this is going to be a big turning point. They bring back Braylon Allen, who might be the best running back in the country. Quite honestly, this team is probably a year away from bringing in enough talent from the transfer portal, recruiting wise, to legitimately possibly compete with the big dogs over in the East and the big dogs coming in from the Pac-12. But with that being said, I have Iowa at number 1. The addition of Cade McNamara, Eric All, although they continue to play the same offensive system as they've claimed, I think just upgrading the talent there in a weak Big Ten West conference will just be the biggest difference here. So I have Iowa as my representative from the West.
Yeah, Henry, I agree with a lot of what you said. With Nebraska, though, I think it's interesting because I really think this, like you said, it could be a huge year for them. I have them at 5-7 overall and missing a bowl game, and 2-7 within the conference. But I do like what you said about them, especially with Matt Rule coming in. And I think this could be a big year for them. And if they can capitalize, I think that being the historic program that they are, I think that they could really take their program to the next level, really where they were at. And I think they could take that big leap this year. So I
This
do
side of
like,
the this side of the conference is much improved from a coaching standpoint. I mean, you bring in Luke Fickell and you bring in Matt Rule. I mean, those are 2 of the best coaches in the country, honestly. And you pair
yeah,
that with I would say the 2, Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day. I think the jury's still out on James Franklin, but pairing them with the other 2, and then you pair them with all the other somewhat decent coaches, I'd say, in the Big Ten West. I mean, that's just going to improve this conference, especially with the 4 new teams coming
in coaching, what a lot of people don't understand is coaching makes a huge difference, not just in game, not as much in game, but I think coaching makes the big difference outside of the game, in practice, in the off season, getting the guys in the right mindset to be winners. See, a lot of teams are lackadaisical, they're whatever in the off season, and that's why they come out so flat in the season, and they don't have their crap together. But I think having a more structured culture, that's what I think that these and really like defining a team. I think that is what a coach brings. Just bringing a team that has, just an identity. So that's what I think these coaches bring. So I absolutely agree with you on that. Although, and we do agree with the champion, I do think Wisconsin, like you said, I have them at 3 in the Big Ten West, behind Minnesota. But I think that Wisconsin can easily win this West. I really only see Wisconsin and Iowa. You kind of put them in a tier of your own. I really only see either one of those 2 winning the West. Maybe Illinois if they exceed expectations, but I don't really think they'll go much higher than 8 wins. But I do think, although I have them at 3, Wisconsin is a good chance of winning, but we both have Iowa. But going into the Big Ten East, I'm going to start off at number 7, Indiana. Nothing great going on there. Their program isn't necessarily imploding like the Northwesterns of the world, but
they're still bad.
they got nothing going on. And then
1 year wonder right there.
right above them, I have Rutgers at 6. Don't hate them, just they're nothing special.
Just bad.
Yeah, I have them at 5-7 overall. By the way, Indiana, I had them at 2-10 overall. They're going 0 and I have them going 0-9 in conference play. I don't have them getting a single home field advantage. Just does not exist for them. They're a basketball school, and you can be both, but not Indiana.
Yeah.
They haven't been relevant since Michael Penix Jr. was quarterbacking over there. They had a little something special going on there.
Stay tuned for more on Michael Penix.
Yeah, Michael Penix, man. That's a name, and that's a football player right there. He's good. He's good. So at 6, Rutgers at 5-7 overall, and then we're gonna take a big leap here and go to 6-6. I got Michigan State at 5. And we talked about Michigan State a lot, so I'm not going to get into them too much, but we talked about Michigan State a lot in our last podcast. So go and listen to that if you want to hear what I have to say about them. I have them at 6-6 overall, making a bowl game there. And then at 4, I have Maryland 8-4 overall. They're going to be real solid, I think, this year. The best team that they've had in recent years. Tagovailoa quarterback. He's going to be probably would you say a top 15 quarterback in the nation? Henry, would you agree with that?
So. Yeah, I'd say he's probably, I mean, top as of now before the season, top 2 or 3, and he might be number 1 in the conference.
Right.
Coming back.
I agree. And I think, well, there's a lot of guys in this conference who have the potential to be better.
Yeah,
like guys we haven't seen, like Drew Aller, right?
And then Devin Brown, whoever starts for Ohio State out of those two.
Because teams like that, they got weapons around them.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not only just the quarterback carrying the team, but it's guys like, at least for Ohio State, you got guys like Marvin Harrison. Like, do you think Talia Tagovailoa has a Marvin Harrison on his team? He doesn't. He doesn't have a game changer like that. So, Maryland at 4, 8-4 overall. And here's the biggest leap of them all. And this is like three-headed monster in the Big Ten East, and honestly in the country. I got Michigan at 3, and by the way, it's a tiebreaker, so do not be like, oh my God, Michigan's at 3. I have them at 11-1 overall. And if that doesn't give it away, it's a 3-way tiebreaker.
And they all beat each other. That's yours, right? Like
I have them all beating each other, and I have Michigan and home field advantage. This is what you guys will see. The biggest theme of this is home field advantage is key, especially in the Big Ten. I think home field advantage means,
and with those 3 teams,
right? Especially those 3 teams specifically, home field advantage means so much. So I don't have Michigan losing at home. I have them dropping 1 to Penn State in Happy Valley. I think that's the game they lose. So I have them at number 3, but really tied for first. And then at number 2, I have Penn State. I have them at 11-1 also. I have them losing to Ohio State. I have them losing in Columbus. They're going to be a really good team. And honestly, sorry, I didn't talk about Michigan as much they're superior in every aspect of the game. And we talked about them a little in the last podcast, the Michigan State, where we talked about Michigan State football, but their defense is a top defense. They have a top offensive line. They have the best running back group in the country with Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum. And then they got J.J. McCarthy, who should be much improved even from last year when he took them all the way to the college football playoffs and a Big Ten championship. So this team is going to be reloaded again this upcoming year, the Michigan team. But moving on to Penn State, they're just even more loaded this year, and they got a quarterback who can be something special. And that's been kind of their thing that's been holding them down recently in the past couple of years, has been they haven't had that quarterback to take them to the next level. They've had Sean Clifford, but Sean Clifford, he was good. He just wasn't great. But I will say about Sean Clifford, the guy was a winner, and he played the game right. So not dissing Sean Clifford at all.
I'm going to interrupt a little bit here. If that's the best compliment you can give Sean Clifford, I think he had a horrible career. He played the game right.
He played the game right. He was a tough guy.
That's disrespectful.
I view him as a Kirk
That's like
Cousins.
saying in basketball, you're efficient.
He's a Kirk Cousins of college football, Sean Clifford.
Imagine somebody saying your best attribute in basketball is you're efficient. That's what it is. Would you be offended by that?
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. If I'm Sean Clifford, I'm livid right now.
But
He doesn't
would
listen to our podcast, so it's all right.
you say Sean Clifford just that?
I don't know. He was bad. I mean, he was there for 6 years and went 10-2 every year.
That's what I'm saying. He was a winner. He just didn't quite take him to the next level. And I think Drew Aller could do exactly that.
All right. All right.
And
Talk about Ohio State.
yeah, I'll move on. Singleton, really like him in the backfield there. He could be a guy that 1-2 punch of the passing game with Aller and then Singleton, that elite. That will be elite. And their defense is solid as well. That will take a step up from last year as well. Moving on to Ohio State. They have a little bit of a quarterback competition right now. So that's a question for sure. But overall, I have them losing. They're 11. I have them at 11-1 overall. Losing to Michigan in the Big House in the last game of the season. That's kind of been the thing with Ohio State is they need to beat Michigan. It's a lot of pressure on Ryan Day since he's lost the last two to Michigan with arguably just as good of teams, if not better than Michigan. And it hasn't necessarily been relatively close. So the past 2 years, they've dropped to Michigan. And honestly, I think they dropped to Michigan again this year, but through some crazy tiebreakers, I have them.
I don't understand.
Yeah, Henry and I, we looked through the rule books and everything, and it appears to be strength of schedule against conference opponents in the opposite division.
It's like if let's say Michigan plays, I don't even know Michigan's exact schedule off the top of my head, but let's say Michigan's three teams they play from the other division are Wisconsin, Purdue, and Nebraska, and their records are 9-3, 6-6, and 7-5. You combine all those records, and whoever has the top record, like combined record from those three teams, I guess, is the winner. But we didn't really feel like calculating that.
Exactly. So through some wild tiebreaker, although they're all 11-1, although they all beat each other, I have Ohio State winning the Big Ten East to set up a championship game of Iowa. And although the story would have been great.
Why don't you give your winner too?
All right, I'll give the winner too. So what I was getting at is, although the story would have been great of Iowa versus Michigan, Big Ten championship game, Cade McNamara trying to get his revenge against JJ McCarthy and the Michigan team, but who honestly, I think that whole situation's a little messed up. I understand it's whatever, but the guy did everything for him. He did as much as he won them the first Big Ten championship in ever, right?
Okay. Tournament or like conference championship game. Yeah.
He won the first conference championship game ever for them. And not only that, but he took them to the college football playoffs. I know they lost, but he did everything they asked and more, was a true leader for that team. And then he just got pushed out, essentially.
It's all right.
And
We don't feel bad for him.
I understand JJ McCarthy's good.
It's better.
He's better, but
Life
you gotta
sucks
feel
sometimes.
for Cade McNamara. Life is just not fair. That's the thing. Life is not fair.
Yeah.
And you'll hear from Cade first. He really got screwed over there. Anyway, the storyline would have been, but I have Ohio State versus Iowa, and the Big Ten West. I just don't think can ever really get it done against the Big Ten East in the championship game. Maybe that'll change with the new realignment. I don't know how that's going to work.
Probably not.
The Big Ten coming into the future years, but I have Ohio State taking this game and advancing to the college football playoff. What will be interesting, though, is if one of these 11-1 teams, like Penn State or Michigan, can creep their way into the college football playoffs as well. So that's something to look out for. To be determined, because we will go over our college football playoffs predictions coming up in a future podcast. but that could be something to look out for. All because your team doesn't win the Big Ten championship game doesn't necessarily mean they can't make it to the playoffs. Anyway, Henry, take it over. Let's hear your East prediction and then your Big Ten champion.
All right, I'm going to start off with both 7 and 6. Indiana and Rutgers, both I have them going 3-9, which I don't actually know if Rutgers is really going to go 3-9, but it's just hard to find them wins because a team that they probably could beat is Michigan State, and I'm just not going to pick that as we talked about earlier. So I think both these teams are going to be terrible, quite honestly. I mean, Rutgers is probably on more of an upswing than Indiana, but they're both going to be bad. 3-9, 1-8 in the conference, 7-6. I have Maryland at 5, at 7-5, and 4-5. And really the biggest thing here is the swing game when they play at Michigan State. And if they find a way to win that game, 8-4 and then 5-4 in the conference looks a lot better. And they're probably going to be in one of the higher bowl games, maybe a New Year's Day bowl game in terms of like the Big Ten New Year's Day bowl games, not one of the New Year's Six, but like the Citrus Bowl. I don't think it's that name anymore, or the Outback Bowl. But I think both of them probably have a chance, Maryland would have a chance if they found a way to go 8-4 or even 9-3. Michigan State talked about them 7-5, 5-4 in the conference. Not going to really get into that. And then we get to the big three. And here's the interesting part here. I have Ohio State losing to Notre Dame.
Oh,
So before this even happens, Ohio State's already going to have a loss before they even get into these games. However, I still have them finishing second in the Big Ten East.
oh wow. Yeah.
Behind a team that also plays in the Big Ten and that has won a conference championship game before, but has won 2 of them. Michigan wins the Big Ten East, 11-1, 8-1 in the conference. Only losses to Michigan State simply because I still don't like them very much. Even though we'll get into this, I think this is quite possibly the best team in the country. And then Penn State, it just doesn't find a way to get it done. I think Drew Aller just comes up short. Too inexperienced as a first-year starter. I know this roster is loaded from top to bottom. I just don't think going into the Horseshoe and even playing Michigan, the fact that it's not a night game is really going to hurt Penn State. I think Michigan takes that game. Penn State going 10-2, 7-2 in the conference. Ohio State at 10-2, 8-1 in the conference with that loss to Notre Dame as well. And then the loss to Michigan. And then Michigan at 11-1 and 8-1 in the conference with the loss to Michigan State. And with that being said, Andrew, if you're keeping track, and to all the other folks at home who are keeping track, my conference championship game is Iowa, Michigan. And you know how you have all the storylines, Cade McNamara. Go ahead.
The storyline.
Cade McNamara, JJ McCarthy, Jim Harbaugh, Cade McNamara. What will happen? 49-7 Michigan. Nothing special here.
Yeah.
I mean, like, let's be realistic. If Michigan's as good as I think, and we all think they're going to be, this game will be probably a massacre. Iowa will get a nice bowl game. Cade McNamara will probably go get to win a bowl game because nobody will play their starters, but he's like 45, so he will play. But Michigan's going to blow them out. I mean, Michigan's a playoff team. I'll just go ahead and say it. No other team from the Big Ten is making the playoff this year. It's Michigan and Michigan only.
See, Henry, I honestly think Michigan is the best team in the Big Ten. I will agree with you there. But I just think, and the only reason why I don't have them going 12-0 is that home field advantage matters.
It's
and
a noon game, though.
I know you have them going into Happy Valley and winning.
But it's a noon game. That's the biggest thing for me. If it was a night game.
Absolutely, because I think night game's a crazier environment. That's exactly why I think you have Michigan State beating Michigan. Is that's that night game environment in Spartan Stadium. But the Big Ten is a bloodbath. Especially, I mean, between those top 3 teams. And that's why I have them all beating each other. We could argue that for days, but let's move on to the Pac-12, Henry.
Andrew, why don't we just quickly talk about these bottom 4 teams? Because I'm pretty sure we both have the same bottom 4. They're all terrible. Like, they don't matter.
Stanford, Arizona State, Arizona, and Cal. Would that be?
I mean, combined wins, do you have them more than 12?
Let's see. 6. I do.
Okay. I have them right at 12. And then Colorado at 8. I think we both have Colorado at 8.
I have Washington State at 8 and so at 7.
I think Colorado. We will get into Colorado, but we don't need to talk about these bottom 4.
Yeah.
Actually, let's talk about Colorado right now because I know you, if I'm not mistaken, you kind of have them with the same record as Washington State, so we can just
I do have them with the same record as Washington State. If you're following along, where I have Colorado at 7.
I have Washington State at 7, Colorado at 8, so same thing.
Flopped, and I have them both at 5 and 7 overall, but I have Colorado going 4 and 5 in the conference compared to Washington State going 3 and 6.
Whereas
Um,
I have Colorado 4 and 8 overall, 3 and 6 in the conference, and then Washington State actually making a bowl game. The definition of Pac-12 after dark is Washington State football 7 and 5, 5 and 4. Find a way into some random bowl game that nobody will watch. Probably the Tony the Tiger Bowl on CBS. They seem to always be playing in that. So, but I think they find a way to make a bowl game.
sure, and there's not too much going on there. No major upsets between those teams. Nothing crazy. I mean, I have them. I have Colorado going to Pasadena and beating UCLA. That I mean that it's not
No,
doesn't change a lot within
not
the
true.
conference. Um, they're not going to be. I have them missing a bowl game. You do as well. I think you have them being worse than me. They're
Terrible.
not anything special. They don't have the talent. It's
They're
simple as
so
that.
small.
They're a small team too, and we kind of. I feel like you talked about it a little in the last podcast, um, or in previous ones before. But I do recall you saying that their line is just full of guys 6'2" and under,
Yeah,
wherever
which
it is.
is like you can't play Division I football like that. Like they're gonna just get manhandled.
Exactly. They
I
just don't
get
have
they
the
have Travis Hunter, but like,
they don't have the talent. They don't have the size. Um, and I'm not sure on the field if they'll have the discipline. That's to be determined.
that's a good
But
one. That's a good point.
they're not much of a team, I feel like. When you just grab 50 guys from the transfer portal and you put them on the field together, how well will they group together in one off season, you know? So don't expect too much from them. I know the hype is there because that's kind of what Dion does. Dion creates that hype wherever he's at. And to be fair, he's a very accomplished coach, at least at Jackson State. Uh, Kind of turned that whole program around, mostly because of his name, if we're being honest. And then guys, the money, the players, they all follow. But anyway, nothing great at Colorado. We both have a missing a bowl game. Let's move on. Here's the bigger jump, I think, in
Top six.
competition. The top six. Although at 6, I have UCLA. I have them at 8 and 4. Uh, they lost their quarterback and DTR, and they play one of the weaker schedules in the Pac-12. I really only have them at 8 and 4 because they play all the bottom teams, so they
Yeah,
just wreck.
exactly.
And their non-conference is just so weak as well. Um, so I have them going 8 and 4. They're not a good team, but they will make a bowl game just because of that and have a 8-win season. Here's where I think the competition gets a lot better. At number 5, I have Oregon State at 9 and 3. They're getting DJ Young. That is just a butcher of a name
I'll
right
I'll give
there.
you this one. DJ,
You, yeah.
just stop there.
All right, we're gonna stop there, and then
DJ, you.
DJ you. Anyway, the system fits him very well, and that's part of the reason why he did go there to Oregon State. They had a great year last year, ended the season, I believe, a top 15 team in the country. Uh, and not only that, but they got their rivalry win against the University of Oregon. Uh, they're going to be good. They're going to be a good team, especially I think DJ is going to have a great year with them, but I just don't think they can compete with those top teams. Don't think they have the talent around them. 9 and 3. And number 4, I've Utah at 9 and 3. I believe Cam Rising is coming back for another. Correct? Cam Rising will be the quarterback there. Uh, they did win the Pac-12 last year. I just don't think they will have what it takes to get it done this year. I have them at 9 and 3 because I think the top 3, once again, similar to the Big Ten East, bloodbath. I just think they all feast on that, or Utah, and I don't think they get it done. Washington is my number 3 team. I have them at 11-1. I have them losing to USC. USC at home, I have USC beating them. That is Washington's one loss. Great quarterback, Michael Penix Jr. I have them winning against Michigan State. That's somewhat of a big game, I would say. A little bit of trouble may be there on the road in Spartan Stadium for their non-conference game. I have them winning that game, going 11-1 with their one loss being to USC. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Defense is good. Have the weapons around them. Just tiebreakers. I have them at number 3. And my number 2 and 1 here at number 2, I have USC. I have them also at 11-1. I have Oregon beating them in Eugene. I think that's going to be a big game. Once again, home field advantage is a huge thing. Oregon beating USC in Eugene. And then that leaves my number 1 team in Oregon. I have Oregon at number 1. I have them losing to Washington at Washington. So, like I said, they all kind of, that's a common theme. They're all feasting on each other up there. But due to tiebreakers, I have Oregon and USC at 1 and 2 there in the Pac-12, both at 11-1. And then I have in the Pac-12 championship game, I have USC ultimately beating Oregon. Oregon has, and I won't talk about too much about Oregon and USC, both great teams. Quarterback is their biggest trade, I think. Caleb Williams for USC, Bo Nix, who I think is a dark horse Heisman, had a great year last year.
Having fun.
Nobody really talked about it too much because Oregon kind of disappointed as a team, especially losing that rival. That kind of set the tone, losing that rivalry game to Oregon State. I think they get their revenge in that game. This year beats Oregon State at home. I think Bo Nix is key, assuming he has the great year he does, or that he had last year, assuming he has a great, even better year next year. I have him getting to the Pac-12 championship game, but ultimately losing to the more talented USC. Henry, take it from here.
All right, Andrew, and we're going to start at 6, kind of go quicker here as I think we are kind of on a time crunch at this point. UCLA 9-3, they're going to lose all 3 of their big games. USC, Oregon State, Utah. I think they struggle in all of those, but the rest of their schedule is pretty easy. I think if Dante Moore is a starter, I think this team next year could be a potential college football playoff team, even playing in the Big Ten for the first year. Dante Moore's kind of used to the cold. That'll give him a big advantage. I have Oregon at 9-3. Yeah, I have Oregon next at 9-3. I have them falling at home to USC, on the road to Oregon, or on the road to Washington, and then on the road to Utah. I think this team just struggled on the road a lot last year. And at the end of the day, I think USC is the more talented team. Bo Nix has a great year, but I think the talent deficiencies, especially on defense, losing all the starters that they did, I think that's just going to be too big of a hole to fill, especially they also only bring back 2 out of 5 starters on the offensive line, lost a few guys in the portal. I think it's just going to be a struggle in the bigger games. I think they find a way to beat Oregon State. But when it comes down to it, this team's 9-3. Next, I have Utah. And even though they bring back Cam Rising, if I'm not mistaken, he's coming off an injury, got surgery in the offseason. They're going to struggle. I mean, struggle is relative. This is
have the talent compared to Washington. And I think you agree with this. I don't see them competing in those big games. Although they won the Pac-12 last year, these teams are reloaded and back and better than ever. These top, 4 teams, 5 teams. And Pac-12, they're going to be eating off each other this year. So keep going, Henry, but that's what I have to say.
Yeah, they play a lot of their tougher games on the road. And I have them being, I'd say, upset by Oregon State. But as you know, if you've been listening, Oregon State is ahead of Utah in my rankings. I have them losing on the road to USC, beating Oregon at home. As I've mentioned earlier, that's a home game. I think that'll just come down to home field advantage between those 2 teams. And then losing on the road to Washington, I think that's just going to be a really tough place to play for teams this year. And quite honestly, I just don't think Utah's the same team as last year. Oregon State is going to be my surprise team. And their 2 losses, they're going to start 10-0. This team's going to be looking really good. College football playoff rankings, probably in the top 4. but then they're just kind of going to fall apart down the stretch. They play home against Washington. I think Washington's just a really good team this year. Finds a way to win that game, and then at that point they're kind of going to be like checked out. I feel like mentally going on the road to Oregon in a rivalry game, kind of a little bit still mourning that loss against Washington. And I think that they lose a tough one. Finish 10-2, solid season, but when it comes down to it, I think it's just not enough. And then Washington at USC. Washington, I feel like they're going to be 11-1. Their one loss will be to USC at USC in the regular season. Same with USC, but they go 9-0 in the conference. But I have them losing to Notre Dame on the road earlier in the season. And then the Pac-12 championship game, I kind of have a shocker. I have Washington winning the Pac-12. And at that point, that probably would get them into the college football playoff. We'll see based on what I have with the rest of the teams. But I have Washington as my Pac-12 conference champion. And then, again, Michigan as my Big Ten conference champion, Andrew.
And for me, I have USC as my Pac-12 champion and Ohio State as my Big Ten champion. We will see how that plays out in terms of college football playoffs. We'll kind of figure that more out when we go through our other predictions through our conferences, and those will be coming soon. So keep notice for that. I will have to say one last thing before we sign off. Henry, I do find it interesting. You have USC losing to Notre Dame. You have Ohio State losing to Notre Dame. Maybe that shakes up some college football playoff those scenarios going forward. That's something to keep note of for sure, at least with your predictions. I have them Notre Dame losing both of those games, but for you, that brings up some interesting scenarios. So something to keep note of. But like I said, we will get these future conference predictions to you guys within the next few days. So just keep notice of that. And Henry, take it from here, brother.
Yeah, Andrew, at this point, just want to let everybody know Marcus Freeman, Sam Hartman, just keep an eye out for them. That we'll talk about them. I'm not sure, probably in the next podcast, but
and it's something special. I like that a lot, Henry. I do.
Yeah, but with that being said, I think this would be a great time to wrap up today's podcast. As always, thank you for listening. We hope you did enjoy. If you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. And if you're listening on any podcast platform, don't forget to download, subscribe, and rate this podcast. And we'll see you guys next time on the Last Take Sports Podcast.